You personally, yes, you. If you use AI, it is going to destroy you. Throughout modern history, all history really, mankind has experienced certain shifts in technology that have affected the patterns of human consciousness. By that, I only mean that there have been moments in history when technological advances have fundamentally altered the way human beings take in information and then access that information. Of course, there was the printing press, but focusing more on modern history, obviously the television represented one of the biggest shifts in human consciousness in recorded history. How human beings received information of all kinds was altered forever by the introduction of moving pictures and then moving pictures with sound. The average modern person might not realize this, but the television forever changed the way we picture things in our minds. To varying degrees, it also altered the way we process information and the way we store it. It also altered how we build thoughts. But it's not even a conspiracy theory anymore that the CIA was looking for ways to use televisions for social control and literal mind control. Look it up. It's a real fact. But even in terms of things like appearance, physicality, existence, the way we talked, the way we argued, the way we loved or expressed emotion, what we believed, why we believed it, it all became beholden to varying degrees to the influence of televised media. And I'm not saying that the TV is the devil box, I'm just trying to convey that major technological advances that alter the way human beings receive communication and information then also alter the way human beings process, store, and access information in their own minds. Massive technological shifts represent corresponding massive human shifts. People are going to hear me say this and think, oh, this Karen is just anti-television and all technology. No, I'm not. I love the medium of TV. I love the internet. I love technology. My point here is that new technologies change how we think. That's not really good or bad, it just is. So the average person who grew up with a familiarity with television will store things in his head differently from, say, the average person in medieval England, for example. He'll also interact with knowledge and information in different ways. That's all. Coming down closer to our era, we find the invention of the internet and, eventually and even inevitably, Google. The internet itself, with its vast storehouses of information, gave rise to a new shift in how human beings store and access information in their own minds. This is sometimes referred to as the Google effect. Simple version, if you know a certain piece of information is online, you're less likely to remember it. That is, you're less likely to even bother to store information in your own head, because now the internet is the great information safety net. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or a neutral thing isn't quite the topic of this video. Interesting discussion though. Zoom ahead another decade or so and you'll reach the dawn of social media. This was even more significant than the internet, in my opinion, and it caused us as a species to experience yet another shift in how we take in information, how we process information, how we store it, etc. Social media completely changed civilization in a way most people haven't really paused to understand. But this is a big enough topic that it needs its own video, so for now we'll just leave it at that. Today's video is focusing mainly on the most recent cataclysmic shift in human consciousness. AI. This is not going to be a video about how everything in Terminator was right, actually. And oh no, the machines are going to become our overlords. Let's face it, the machines already are our overlords. When Edward Snowden was interviewed in 2013 regarding the revelations he had presented to humankind about how our machines were being used to spy on us every hour of every day, he said that his greatest fear was that people would receive this knowledge and do nothing.
The greatest fear that I have regarding the outcome for America of these disclosures is that nothing will change. People will see in the media all of these disclosures. They'll know the lengths that the government is going to grant themselves powers unilaterally to create greater control over American society and global society. But they won't be willing to take the risks necessarily to stand up and fight to change things.
And that's exactly what happened. Machines have been our overlords ever since we found out that Google and Apple and everyone else mines all our data all day long. And yet we continue to use the Google products and the Apple products. And we continue to update our Facebook profile and post to Instagram, even though we know it's all being mined for data, or nowadays used to train AI in order to, what? Allow the CIA to spy on us, allow advertisers to sell us stuff, to create bots that mimic people to alter the course of democratic elections. What does it matter at this point? No one cares. Everyone just keeps on doom scrolling. Machines don't need to mass enslave humankind. We've already enslaved ourselves to our devices. The second we decided that the doom scroll was more important than privacy or our peace of mind or our mental health, the machines had already won. This video also isn't about the major corporations stealing everything you type or post on the internet and using it to train their AI. That's a factor, but it's not the topic of this video. Especially now that we've reached a point at which the mega social media corporations operated by automaton CEOs are finding ways to legally use everything you type or post on social media to train their LLMs. And while we're at it, let's also mention the publishing conglomerates who have signed deals with these AI companies, allowing them to use anything that is published by that conglomerate to train its AI. Or how about that time that Meta was going to buy Simon & Schuster so they could use their entire back catalog of printed works to train their LLMs? And now authors are even being asked to sign deals allowing their publishers to use their books to train their AIs. This isn't even an ethical or legal question anymore. They'll continue to find legal ways to steal everything everyone has ever written, drawn, photographed, or recorded. And meanwhile, people will continue to willingly hand over everything they post online, even though they know is being used to train AI. None of that is news. Everyone knows that the AI companies are ethical black holes, and just like with the revelation that social media and internet companies are spying on you, or the government is using your phone to track you, no one really seems to care. People just carry on using AI to summarize their Google search, to explain a YouTube video, to translate a movie, to recap a television show, to generate quote-unquote ethical, explicit adult media, and also straight-up CSAM. And, write their homework reports, their to-do lists, their schedules, their resumes, their love letters, their poetry, and their novels. Just like in 2013, no one really cares. First things first, I have seen a lot of incredibly stupid posts saying things along the lines of, being mad or concerned about AI is just like being mad or concerned about typewriters or cameras. I don't know who needs to hear this. No, it's not. Firstly, when using a typewriter or a laptop or even speech-to-text software, you are still the one writing, controlling, thinking, planning, deciding everything, exactly as you would be if you were writing with a pencil, or a quill pen, or a brush, or anything else. The tool, in this case, extends human agency. It doesn't augment or replace it. As for cameras, they perform a separate function from traditional or even digital art. They are reproducing reality using a specific mechanism and technology. Finally, both examples and any other nonsense idiots might dream up are still, nevertheless, rooted in reality. We'll talk more about that in a minute. First, though, what's the state of the world with AI? Well, as of mid-2025, roughly 27% of American adults used AI constantly or at least several times a day. Many experts believe that that number is actually much higher, given how much AI is integrated into every aspect of internet life. These experts believe that the percentage of adult Americans who use AI constantly or several times a day is closer to 79%. Despite the fact that there seems to be a steady rise in AI usage, you also have surveys reporting a marked decrease in AI interest, and even outright AI disgust, such as the general backlash against new AI actresses and singers, or horrible AI-generated ads. The bottom line is, I don't need to show you infographics for you to know that AI is everywhere. And even if it is a bubble and the bubble is about to burst, like any new consciousness-altering technology, it's not going anywhere. You can't unring a bell. It all reminds me of Snowden all over again. A huge percentage of society seems to understand that AI is horrible and are even outraged by its existence, and yet no one really seems to care that much. People still chat with bots, listen to AI music, and use LLMs to do all kinds of their thinking for them. People talk about the right way to use it, or they'll gush about how it helped them get their life together. They talk about harnessing its power for good or whatever, like, no, it's a gift, why not use it for good? Where have I heard that before? Within the world of creativity, images, videos, music, and literature, people have had a taste of how much easier it is to accomplish their goals, sort of, with AI. So in that respect, in some ways, the damage is permanent. My area is literary, so that's what I was most interested to observe when this whole trend took off. At least once a week, I get a message from some new company that wants to sponsor one of my videos. This company claims to be a tool for writers, but all it is a curated assortment of AI generators. This one generates dialogue, this one generates plot structures and outlines, this one assesses your prose, this one helps you brainstorm, this one looks for plot holes, and so on and so on. A few times I've replied to these emails asking these companies why they think outsourcing the creative process to a machine is actually helping writers. I usually get the same, probably AI-generated response, something along the lines of streamlining the boring part of the process, making writing more inclusive. You've all heard all of this before. Basically, because it's easier. And we're going to talk later about how incredibly bad it is for your mind to rely on a machine to do these things for you. But for right now, I want you all to take a giant step back and really look at this whole situation as if you're seeing it for the first time. Imagine you step into current year and everyone tells you how they've used AI for all these things. They used AI to put together their grocery shopping list, used AI to write a jingle for a car commercial, used AI to write an apology letter to their spouse, used AI to outline a report they're writing on Macbeth, used AI to plan and outline their novel. The first question that comes to my mind is, what has each person in these examples used their own human mind to do? How many people ask ChatGPT how to solve a conflict with their spouse, and then the AI advises an apology letter and then generates one for them? How many people wait until the AI on the shopping app sends them a notification to tell them it's time to go grocery shopping and then generates a list? How many kids in school get a homework assignment and ask Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever how they should approach it, or for ideas to get started? How many people fire up the old mega corporation LLM trained on infinity Reddit posts and use it to have a conversation about current political matters? And so on and so on. Where exactly does the human end and the machine begin? Let's put aside ethics for a moment and think about humanity. What will happen to us as human beings if we keep letting AI perform basic tasks which are absolutely essential to the human condition? Let's put aside the fact that the AI that we're allowing to run our lives and make our decisions for us is invariably controlled by a soulless multi-billionaire who is absolutely collecting every speck of data they learn about you from your AI usage, from how much cheese you eat to whether or not you use dangling modifiers. Let's put aside the fact that corporate LLMs with their corporate speak and their corporate HR problem-solving policies are being used to provide psychological assistance to the mentally unwell. Let's put aside the fact that we have officially entered the future dystopia depicted in countless dystopian movies in which a soulless machine provides everything from diagnosis to absolution. Let's put aside the fact that soulless corporate-made machines interested only in maximizing profits on a scale the average human being cannot even fathom has now also begun to resurrect the dead. Is AI the one ring of evil and blah blah blah? Yeah, it kind of is, but not in the way you think. The problem with apocalyptic dystopian movies is that they have conditioned us to think that the destruction of civilization will come with a huge flash of radiation and a mushroom cloud the size of Texas, when the reality is a lot more like The Matrix. No one will really know because, crucially, no one will really care. Everyone in the whole world will just slide the one ring on and use it for literally every single aspect of their lives, willfully oblivious to the wholesale civilizational destruction they are causing. I can't believe I have to say this, but we're not supposed to be using the dystopian hellscape novels and movies as civilizational blueprints. Today, we're not going to talk about the ethics of AI and plagiarism and corporations stealing art. We're not going to talk about the so-called inevitable march of progress or any of that. We're going to talk about one thing above all else. You personally, yes, you. If you use AI, it is going to destroy you. And if enough of us do it, it's going to aid in the destruction of civilization. And no, I don't mean it's going to replace you. An LLM is not going to upend the career of the next would-be Ernest Hemingway. Slop has always existed, and the finer examples of excellent human work have always prevailed. A machine vomiting slop onto the bookshelves of Barnes & Noble isn't going to change that now. Not even a bunch of Silicon Valley weirdos in their bizarre new digital dollhouse can actually replace human artists. To all the writers out there, if AI writing can actually replace what you do, then what you do isn't writing. And don't get me wrong, it is vile that AI is temporarily at this moment replacing the human element of the somewhat mundane writing jobs like catalog descriptions and website copy. But if you're a novelist of some kind and you find that AI is, big gigantic air quotes here, better than you, that means you need to work harder and become a better writer. And guess what? For you, the human being, that's actually possible. If you work really hard, there's no limit to how much you can grow as a writer. AI doesn't have that because it's a machine, not a person. But if you do find yourself being somewhat arguably technically outwritten by AI, that doesn't mean AI is a better writer than you. It just means you still have work to do. But we all do. There's nothing shameful in that. Any skill issues can be fixed by a human. A human just has to practice and get better. And AI is a machine that can only spit out a grotesque, soulless amalgamation of what it has been fed. So yeah, maybe the grammar will be okay some of the time. Maybe the use of prose will be a little smoother than yours some of the time. But so what? Practice your prose and get better. Eventually you'll shoot through the ceiling of what could theoretically be possible for a machine 100 years from now. Why? Because you're a human being. The human element cannot be quantified, coded, or programmed. In the world of matter and reality, the human is king. All the rest is subject to humanity. Be it animal, mineral, plant, or digital, it is all subject to the dominion of the beings who have the use of reason. A machine does not have the use of reason, therefore it cannot have control over anything. But if you give it control over things, especially your human mind, you are reducing yourself to something less than human. And that is shameful. It isn't shameful to be outwritten by a machine that has ingested the entire canon of English literature. It's shameful to think that that means anything. A copier tasked with making a photocopy of a Rembrandt will, in that moment, be a better artist than most people. That doesn't mean anything, and no sane artist would feel ashamed being compared to a photocopier. What's shameful is giving in, to say, well, I'm not as good as I want to be, so I'm going to give up and let the machine do the thinking or the problem solving or the prose for me. Don't do that. Don't give another machine still more power over your mind and your daily life. That being said, even if the next Ernest Hemingway isn't going to be replaced by the AI, he might be poisoned by AI. He might have his talent and his drive to improve himself cut off at the knees by AI. And that's where the real danger is. It's true when I say that AI's domination of human arts is going to end. It's true when I say that humans are inherently superior by the mere quality of their being human. But what happens when human beings allow themselves to become more and more and more dependent on these AI machines and LLMs? What then? When I say AI is going to destroy you, this is what I mean. I mean that if you use it, you will be killing your creative self, killing your intellect, your reasoning, your problem-solving skills, and the soul of your literary identity that cannot grow in artificial digital soil. More than that, if you build dependence on artificial machine intelligence, you will erode your ability not just to think for yourself, but also to perceive the distinction between real and false reality. That sounds nutty, but we'll talk more about it in a minute. First, how about some facts? Here are a few which I have backed up with sources, and remember, we're still in the beginning phases of AI's overall damage to human consciousness, so in time, more will emerge. But for now, using AI reduces your intelligence, your problem-solving skills, and your creative elasticity. Using AI reduces your own vocabulary, grammar skills, and reading comprehension skills. Using AI removes difficulty from the creative or work process, which decreases the quality of the work and your emotional and psychological satisfaction in your work. I've become addicted to putting together the list of sources, so you'll find another companion piece on my website for this video with a lot of fun data you can take your time going through. As I was reading studies about AI and how humans use it and the effect it has on their work and their minds, a number of things started to become clear. First of all, studies done on AI do not often take into consideration the long-term effects of their benefits, and just as often they create ludicrous scenarios for the AI to fix, thereby making itself look amazing. Take this study, for example, that was done on reading comprehension of complex texts, such as medical journal or financial journal articles. Readers were provided with the AI-generated simplification of these texts, and then a multiple-choice questionnaire was administered. Those who used the AI simplification scored higher, and so the study concluded AI helps with reading comprehension. First of all, that's not real reading comprehension. Yes, obviously, it's looking at whether or not they can comprehend what they're reading, but this study didn't show that AI improved their reading comprehension of the actual written text. The only text the readers were able to read and comprehend was that generated by AI. So in that sense, there was no reading comprehension on display. Secondly, reading comprehension has to be assessed according to the reader's reading level. If you give a 7-year-old Crime and Punishment and he doesn't understand it, does that mean he has no reading comprehension, even though he can quote you chapter and verse of the Chronicles of Narnia? If you plop your average literate person down in front of, I don't know, anti-CD38 monoclonal antibody CM313 for primary immune thrombocytopenia, chances are they're going to struggle a little. The fact that a dumbed-down version of such an article is easier to understand to the average non-medical professional person does not mean anything. Why? Because the average person reading anti-CD38 monoclonal antibody CM313 for primary immune thrombocytopenia, that is, the person for whom it was written, probably has the need to understand every single word as written. They're probably in medical school or are a practicing medical professional. If your doctor needs the AI simplified version of a medical research paper, your problems are a lot bigger than mere literacy, let me just say. If you're reading a financial article or a complex philosophical paper or something like that, that means you want to learn what it's saying. Reading the AI simplified version of that is not the same as reading it. If you don't understand the words, look them up in a dictionary. If you don't understand the concepts, maybe you're not ready for this article and you need to read a few simpler ones first that explain the concepts so you know what this article is talking about. This, by the way, is how you build and maintain basic literacy. There's nothing shameful about having to work up to a difficult text. That's how it's supposed to be. That's precisely the way in which we build our mental muscles and build our intelligence. But, as we've discussed before on this channel, basic literacy is not just in decline, it's being actively stifled. Providing these lovely, handy AI explainers might seem like a helpful band-aid to the literacy problem, but it's actually just the next volley of attacks. You go to school and no one bothers to teach you how to read. You hit high school and everyone's shoving critical literacy down your throat with a giant toilet plunger. You graduate from college unable to read past a 5th grade level and unable to detach yourself emotionally from the knee-jerk reactions you were programmed to have when you heard certain words. You open your phone and you pull up a news article and AI pats you on the head and says, there, nice little stupid human, this one's too hard for you. Here, let me explain it so a 6-year-old could understand it. Which means that you're no longer motivated to increase your own vocabulary. You have no reason to practice your literacy skills, so you can read these complex texts and understand them without AI aid. Basically, you start stupid, and now AI will make sure you stay stupid. Do these AI explainers increase reading comprehension? It's pretty bold to assume the AI explainer is even accurate, but in the long term, it will actually decrease your reading comprehension. Your brain will have atrophied into this thing that can only handle the super simple AI paragraph, and so you'll struggle with anything more complex. This fascinating study talks about this at length, particularly the cognitive debt that is incurred by the mind using AI. As they define in the paper, cognitive debt defers mental effort in the short term, but results in long-term costs, such as diminished critical inquiry, increased vulnerability to manipulation, and decreased creativity. One of the other things I noticed was how people talked a lot about how AI used in this way reduces cognitive load, which means it makes things easier. It also means that the reader doesn't get stressed when they realize that the text is a little beyond them. So it's like the textual version of bumpers at the bowling alley. When I was a kid, I would sometimes go to the bowling alley with my friends. There were lots of kids there, groups of all ages, and it was embarrassing to screw up in front of all of them, yeah. But the only time anyone ever openly made fun of anyone? When they put up the bumpers. Little Timmy might cry when his bowling ball goes into the gutter. What do? Do you help him fix his aim so it rolls down the middle, or do you just shrug your shoulders and put up the bumpers? It sucks to fail. It sucks to open a book and realize that 40% of it is going to require a dictionary to understand. But you know what? That's how it works. You feel pain or discomfort or even embarrassment, and your brain says, okay, folks, how do we make sure we never feel this again? Well, we could quit bowling, yes, but bowling is fun. So what if we just keep practicing and look up some tutorials and tips and keep practicing and keep trying, and then whammo, one day you look up and you're bowling 275. That's how being a human being is supposed to work. Failing means you tried and it didn't go well. Bumpers means you were too scared to try. There is a tremendous amount of data out there on the topic of difficulty. If a task is hard, that's actually good for you. Sure, it builds character and all that, but accomplishing something without help or training wheels when it was difficult produces immense emotional and psychological satisfaction. Anyone out there in the audience who has ever won a contest or competition or completed a difficult project or something, or has, for example, finished writing a book, will know what I'm talking about. You feel almost euphoric, and the feeling lasts. The pride you're able to take in your work is a source of constant pleasure and happiness, not to mention a positive motivator to keep working hard. People who have the bumpers, who don't do the work, might finish the task, but they won't feel the same pride, if they feel any at all. Why would you willingly rob yourself of that? It's genuinely one of the greatest feelings in the world, and we're celebrating a technology that takes that feeling away. These AI explainers, by the way, are just a far more evil version of abridged books. If you ever want to see fire come out of my eyes, just start trying to convince me that abridged books aren't a crime against humanity. If you've read the abridged version of a book, you haven't read the book. If you've read the AI explainer of an article or a medical paper or whatever, you haven't read the text, and you don't know what the author wrote. Let's put aside the fact that AI has been shown time and again to be wrong. It lies, it invents things, it doesn't care. Why would you trust the random generated text of a machine to tell you what a human said? The first time I read Moby Dick, it was the abridged version, and I didn't know because I was 9. For the next 10 years of my life, I thought that the first words of Herman Melville's masterpiece were, "My name is Ishmael." It wasn't just shortened, it was altered. Iconic sentences and turns of phrase were reduced to their simplest parts. The soul of the text was gone. Why? To reduce cognitive load. Let me tell you about the cognitive load I experienced when I found out the truth years later and flew into such a rage that I spontaneously became one of the world's leading crusaders against abridging books. Seriously, abridging books should be illegal. What's the point of learning how to do something if you don't actually learn how to do it yourself? What's the point of reading a book if you're not reading the words the author actually wrote? What's the point of reading an article if you're not learning everything the actual human writer is trying to convey? What's the point of writing a letter to your wife if you're not the one who comes up with each word? What's the point of being alive if you're going to just let a machine do all your living for you? This is the feature I saw again and again in studies which presented what the researchers referred to as the positive effects of using LLMs on cognition, lower cognitive demands, and a less stressful learning experience. This was often self-reported by users. In one case, secondary school students were assessed for reading comprehension. One group used note-taking and the other used LLMs. The ones who used LLMs reported that the exercise was more fun and more interesting, but their reading comprehension was significantly inferior to the group that just took notes. This is the fun factor, the new toy paradox. You are presented with a glittering new piece of technology, and it is, without question, fun to play with it. You don't know what's going to happen when you press the button, and as anyone who's ever used a slot machine already knows, that's at least half the fun. In that sense, AI and LLM usage is like gambling. You plug in your prompt or ask it a question, pull the lever, and see what spins up. Maybe you'll hit a jackpot, maybe not. But you can always just spin again, and again, and again, and again. And like gambling, it's habit forming, just like refreshing your feed or scrolling to the next TikTok video, and the next, and the next, and the next. My guess is that the effect doom scrolling has on cognition will be mirrored in some way in extended AI usage. For anyone who hasn't already seen the data coming in about that, doom scrolling has been found to produce a decline in executive function, a decline in memory, a reduction in attention span and focus, not to mention all the psychological and emotional impacts. And a huge factor there is that reduced cognitive load. The brain is hypnotized into total passivity. Can you even imagine the compounded cognitive debt you're incurring? Pursuing a reduction in cognitive load is one thing when you get home from work or school and you're trying to relax. So maybe you, cook and listen to music, or maybe you knit, or play video games, or watch a movie. But if what you're doing is actually supposed to be work, like problem solving something at the office, or planning the plot of a novel, or just, forming an opinion about the book you just read, you should not be actively trying to reduce your cognitive load. That's like going to the gym to exercise and choosing to use artificial assistance to help you lift the weights because otherwise the physical load on your arms is a little hard to handle. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to be hard. You're going to hear me say that a lot in this video. Using AI might seem easy and helpful right now, but on a pretty short timeline, it will atrophy your brain. There's no getting around it. The brain is a muscle, and if you let a machine do its work, it will atrophy. What happens when the brain atrophies? You get stupid. And as you get more and more stupid, you need the machine more and more. And then you get even stupider, and then you need the machine more, and so on forever. Yes, I'm saying that if you use AI for any kind of writing or reading or decision making, or for any part of the creative or reasoning process, it will make you stupid. We're already seeing data that scrolling TikTok reduces your IQ. But my guess is that in the next couple of years, we'll also learn that AI usage hammers your IQ. There's more of this on my website, but here are several studies that have been published recently about the cognitive effects of using AI. One chilling study from MIT found that brain connectivity systematically scaled down with the amount of external support. That is, the more external support the mind was given from artificial sources, but especially LLMs, the less of the brain was being used. This study also found that the participants who wrote essays using LLM support were unable to remember what they had written. The study's authors predict that widespread implementation and usage of LLMs will result in a widespread decline in learning skills. And I mean, I don't know about other countries, but here in America, I'm not sure learning skills can get any worse. But soon, AI users won't know what time to get up in the morning without AI. They won't know what they should eat for dinner without AI. If you currently count yourselves among the literate, you won't be for long. Soon, your ability to string a thought together will be hindered. You'll find yourself reaching for your phone to ask your AI to help you explain something like which cinnamon roll recipe is superior, or how to ask your boss for a day off, or how to explain your personal political opinions. Even for those who won't be asking AI to explain politics to them, they'll still gradually come to rely on AI to help explain their own opinions to themselves. How much of that do you have to do before you no longer see a boundary between your thoughts and the machine? This interview with a French professor specializing in information technology is incredibly illuminating. One of the things he points out is that our current so-called information age with widespread ubiquitous AI allowing us access to unlimited information is not actual information, but rather a generalized illusion of knowledge. He goes on to say, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that LLMs and AI are driving intellectual, emotional, and moral mediocrity on a global scale. Intellectual because they encourage overconsumption of content without any real critical analysis. Emotional because they create an ever-deepening dependence on stimulation and entertainment. And moral because we have fallen into passive acceptance of algorithmic decisions. This is related to the Google effect, which was first written about over a decade ago. If you recall from earlier, studies had been finding that if people knew that information was available online, they were less likely to remember it. AI takes the Google effect and dials it up to 11. If you don't even have to use a single brain cell to call up a cogent sentence that describes the information, not only will you not remember it, that knowledge will simply never touch your brain. It will just pass through without even leaving a mark. Further, multiple studies have begun to come in suggesting that reliance on AI increases the risk of cognitive decline, not to speak of the fact that it is absolutely addictive. And in the case of information, addiction to the thing that makes generating and analyzing information fast and easy will ultimately create a reliance. Given enough time, you won't be able to think or form coherent thoughts without help from AI. Now, think about all the people who are graduating from high school and college with 12 to 16 years of critical literacy coursing through their veins. They're already unable to think or form coherent thoughts. So to them, the AI is just a basic tool, like a calculator or a GPS. They are oblivious to the fact that it has been placed in their hands specifically to mask the fact that they no longer have the ability to interact with real life. And the more they use it, the greater the dependency becomes, until they reach a point at which they would literally cease to function as a human being without the artificial assistance. According to this interesting report in the Harvard Business Review, in 2024, the top use for AI was generating ideas. Therapy and companionship was number 2, but then below that, you had all this other stuff. Web search, text editing, exploring topics, etc. Putting aside whether or not AI should be used for these things, the point is that in 2024, people were still using it mainly to augment their own thinking, writing, and creativity. I don't think that's healthy. Let me show you why. Now, in 2025, generating ideas has dropped to 6th, and now number 1 is therapy and companionship. Considering what we've already been hearing about the people going insane and marrying their chatbots, and people being driven to mental illness by their therapy bots, that's not exactly heartening information. Also, just really quickly, can we all pause and take in the fact that for millions and millions of people, the number 1 use for this corporate machine is therapy and companionship? If that isn't the most terrifying and dystopian way to start the new year, I don't know what is. Oh, that's hot. Meanwhile, things like editing text, exploring topics, web searches and creativity, and even personalized learning aren't even in the new 2025 top 10. What that tells me is that it only took 1 year for AI to start melting brains on a civilizational scale. Look at 2025's top 3. Therapy and companionship, organizing my life, and finding purpose. That suggests to me a dangerous level of personal, emotional, and cognitive reliance on a machine has already developed. Am I Chicken Little screaming that the sky is falling? You tell me. Many people have self-reported that they have become too reliant on AI in their daily lives. We already know from social media that little will be done by the average user to curb that reliance, just as little is done in current year to curb doom scrolling or general social media addiction. How will these numbers look next year? How will society look? Are the machines going to win? As I said, they already have. They had won before AI even entered the arena. We were a civilization primed by critical literacy, 5-second attention spans, and social media addiction for the ultimate tool for mass hypnosis. Generative AIs and LLMs are addictive and dangerous. Maybe there's a way to use them responsibly, but this is a society of human beings who can't even stop doom scrolling without locking their phone in a timed lockbox. How much responsibility can we really expect from the average person? Our age is the least responsible in recorded human history. People these days shouldn't be given a puppy, never mind an addictive, brain-altering piece of multi-billion-dollar technology. Let's take a moment here to talk about the other issue, using AI to write, or more broadly, using AI for the creative process. Using AI to write prose for a novel or even a poem is something a lot of reasonable people will rightly condemn out of hand. But so many of these same reasonable people will then also use AI to help them brainstorm or outline or plan their plots. Something that needs to be made clear, writing the prose is maybe 10% of the writing process, at most. All the rest of it, the brainstorming, the plot planning, the endless tedium of outline, revision, planning, re-revision, all of that is by far the most important part of the writing process. And you're farming it out to a machine. Guess what? Writing is hard. It's supposed to be. You're supposed to struggle. You're supposed to doubt yourself. You're supposed to wonder if it's good enough and never be entirely sure. You're supposed to use your soul to do it. You're a human being with a heart and mind and a soul. Nothing with heart and mind and soul will ever be produced by a machine. I don't care how much you babysit it. Sit down at your desk and bleed. That's how you write. Do you think Kafka would have been a better writer if he'd had ChatGPT there, stroking his ego and telling him how brave and authentic he was? I mean, I didn't know the man, but I'm guessing that would have felt a little like glancing in the mirror and seeing a giant cockroach staring back at him. In terms of practicality alone, you're supposed to be the one going through it and looking for plot holes. You're supposed to be the one trying to see if this plot twist works, or if this pacing is good, or maybe a little off. It's your job as the writer. But practically speaking, if you farm that out to anyone else, you'll never figure out how to do it, which means you'll never grow as a writer. If you farm it out to a machine, you're only going to get the illusion of competence in these areas. Either the machine will be wrong, flat out, or it's going to tell you what you want to hear and stroke your fragile little ego, and then you'll never grow as a writer or as a person. Keep that up long enough and everything about you as a writer will be machine built. It might not be a giant cockroach, but maybe when you look in the mirror, what you'll see is just a giant data server, which is at least as bad. You have to really look at AI and let yourself see the existential horror of it. Sure, it's great for some automated processes, I don't really know, but literature, any kind of art, but especially literature, is so immensely deeply human that removing humanity from it in any way is the same as setting it on fire. If you choose to read the AI explainer for a book, such as the ones Amazon is now adding to their Kindle books, then you might as well just take your Kindle and throw it into a fire, because you're not actually reading the book. Every book ever written with any kind of AI assistance greater than spell check is not a book. It's a slop machine production. It's slop. Even if All the writer did was use AI to help brainstorm and plan the plot. That writer took out a piece of their humanity and then replaced it with a mass-produced generative model programmed by evil corporations to pretend to be human by mass-consuming social media posts and listicles. And then they used what the machine gave them and nurtured it into this horrible, malformed piece of pretend literature. It's the uncanny valley on a cultural scale. Anytime you use AI to help you plan or write a novel, you're basically burning your book before it can even be born. And then you're shoveling the ashes of it into a giant machine that will mix those ashes with all these other ashes and then spit out something formed from ash paste that kind of looks like a pretty well-formed book, but the second you apply any kind of scrutiny to it, it crumbles in your hands. Why would anyone do that? Because it's easier? So what? It's supposed to be hard. And because it's hard, it produces magical, eternal works of pure art that can never be replicated or erased or forgotten. If all a writer wants to do is mass produce a bunch of slop to sell for 99 cents a pop on Amazon so they can make a bunch of money, sure, I guess use AI. But just know that the more you do that, the less of you will be a human being. Keep carving out essential basic parts of your human mind and replacing it with AI, and pretty soon you'll just be another generative machine that people can walk up to and press a bunch of buttons and you spit out some random brainless programmed nonsense, just like all the other human machines. Is that really what we want as a society, just so it can be easier to write a poem or a homework paper? Do you really hate your own humanity so much that you're willing to cut it out and give it to a multi-billionaire while you're left with such a void in your own ability and personality that you have no choice but to use that multi-billionaire's AI to fill it? That cannot be what we want for our future. We, as a civilization, with this increasing obsession with and reliance on AI, are every day moving steadily towards a very unsettling future. A future in which people are no longer able to tell the difference between reality and unreality. And I don't mean that people will look at a photo and not be able to tell if it's a real photo or if it's AI generated because AI is just oh so good. I mean that to future generations, the entire concept of real and unreal will not be comprehensible. If we keep going like we are, the solid, definable concept of objective reality will break down. And if reality cannot be defined or even identified, what will that do to the rest of human consciousness, never mind the average person's ability to write a novel? I highly encourage all of you to read Baudrillard's work on simulation and simulacra. It is natural in humanity to imitate reality. You see this in things as simple as people drawing pictures of what they see or writing books about the real world, even fantastical variations on the real world. Baudrillard observed that our world has become one in which the simulation now comes before reality and dictates and forms reality, instead of the other way around. In a natural situation, reality controls the simulation, dictates the simulation, but we're several generations into a reality that is built on a foundation that was not real to begin with. That was not only false, but that didn't exist. And an AI or LLM is the definition of non-existence. It is faux intelligence, faux consciousness, faux humanity. And yet it is being used to guide intelligence, consciousness, and humanity. If what we are and what makes us real human beings comes from something that never existed in the first place, then how much of us is real? Taking a very basic and digestible approach to Baudrillard's observations, a person can come to understand that art is born from reality. Yes, even if you're writing fantasy or science fiction, even if you're drawing strange monsters, or making a movie about an alternate reality in which cars run on pizza, your reference point for all these things is reality. I'll even go as far as to say that it's objective reality. When we use paint or clay or a digital art program to reproduce reality, even if it's just an imagined reality, or when we use a pen and paper or a typewriter or a word processor to write descriptions of reality, again, even if it's a wholly imagined reality, we, the human beings, are using our humanity and our humanity's solid tether to real reality as a reference point for our creation. This is why artists, and especially writers, are encouraged to live. Lived experience broadens our reference points to reality. That's why humans need to experience real human life, not digital online life, if they want to produce human art. Artists and writers need as many real-world reference points as possible. The more, the better. Now, already in current year, we've got some difficulties with that. A fascinating study and analysis done in 2003 estimated that most or all of modern humans' knowledge of the so-called real world has been taken from things that are not real. That is, our conceptual framework for reality comes from fictional stories like books or Netflix or even fairy tales, people we've never met, such as politicians, actors, and reporters, or people who don't exist, such as fictional characters, and broadcasting events that we personally did not witness, such as the Second World War, or events that are entirely fabricated, such as fake news or hoaxes. But humans then take all this fake or somewhat fake knowledge and use it to build their reality, or you could say their tether to reality. And so one has to ask oneself, how much of your reality is real? How much of your tether to reality actually exists? What happens when it snaps? Suffice to say that the average writer's real-world experience and knowledge isn't entirely real, or it's at least once or twice removed from reality at best. So now let's look at an example with which we're all familiar, especially the ladies in the audience. When we look at the pictures in the magazines of the pretty models, we know that we're not seeing reality. We can look at that picture and say, okay, no one has skin that has zero texture, for example. But ask yourself how you know that. It's because you have a real-life touchstone, which is your own physical body. And not just that, but also all the physical bodies of the other people you meet in real life. But what if you didn't have that tether to reality? How would you metabolize the false reality you were being presented? Would it enter your mind as reality or false reality? Or would the entire concept of reality be incomprehensible to you? Why do you think it has become increasingly easy to manipulate young people into thinking wildly unrealistic physical appearances like 14-year-olds more muscular than Arnold Schwarzenegger and whatever the hell is going on with actresses these days is reality? It's because being raised on social media literally from birth, they are more detached from real reality than any generation that has come before. What happens when this generation and the next one become tethered to a false reality made up almost entirely of AI actresses and models, and AI-made video games and movies, AI-made music and AI singers, AI politicians and AI religions, AI mom and dad? If AI actors and actresses are welcomed and become the standard in movies and TV, this will be why. Because people have already lost that much of our tether to reality that the shift from social media internet humanity to completely false artificial humanity will not be that big of a leap to the minds of the average artificially formed person. Maybe the reason the movie companies think AI actors can replace real actors is because real actors haven't been real for a long time. And at least an AI actor won't go on Twitter and run his mouth nuking your billion-dollar movie before it even hits theaters. What if everyone you interacted with online was AI? That's probably closer to reality than we'd like to think. What if every book you read was AI generated, and you used those books to help you understand reality, understand real people and real problems and real beauty and real life? That's a little chilling. We'll return to it in a minute. But first, when human beings write books, they are encouraged to touch reality and then report on what they find in some way. Machines can only pretend to have touched reality, and they can't even know when they're wrong. A machine can pretend to know how the warmth of the sun feels on its skin, but cannot actually know, nor does it have any desire to know, because it's just software. Even if a real human person had never felt the warmth of the sun, they still have skin, they still understand what warmth is, and they experience the human craving for it. And so, when they write it, they absolutely achieve something closer to the truth by the mere fact of being human. But when a machine writes, it pretends to be human and then presents humanity as if it possessed it, as if it knows. The danger isn't that it will get it right. The danger is that people will be fooled into thinking that an incidentally accurate pretense is in any way comparable to actual reality. The machine has no tether to reality. It desires no tether to reality because it is software, and it is merely performing its programmed function, which is explicitly to simulate reality without having experienced it just enough for the user to be satisfied. Its prose might be excellent, and its use of similes and metaphors downright poetic, and its ability to structure a narrative and find plot holes might sometimes border on magical, but it cannot present reality because it doesn't have the capacity to experience it. You create great characters, for example, not by finding the perfect formula, but by meeting and talking to a lot of real human beings. You touch reality, reality touches you then reproduce it in some way in your art. Now let's return to that chilling thought from before. What if all those real human beings that you meet have built their reality from things that aren't real? What if every part of a human being besides the flesh and blood was constructed from things that weren't made by humans, but were made by machines? What if they were taught in school by AI, and AI graded their papers, and AI generated their textbooks? What if their only knowledge of social interaction came from chatbots? What if the only way they communicated with their parents was through AI-generated texts and emails? What if their sermons at church were AI-generated, and their confessionals and therapy sessions were manned by artificial intelligence? What if the only books they read were AI-generated, and the only movies they watched were AI-generated? If that person even bothered to take it upon himself and write his own novel with his own words and ideas, how real would it be? What if people no longer have a tether to reality? What if they treat the unreality that is produced by a machine as real? What if those people then write books, and then those books are read by the next generation? How long do you think it would take for human beings to lose basic reasoning, the ability to distinguish right from wrong, never mind real from fake? Let's say you, a writer, choose to write a novel by exercising guidance and control over the AI while it generates your plot. Let me ask you this. If you guided a toddler in how to draw a house, would the resulting drawing be yours or the toddler's? In this example, of course, AI is the toddler. In this example, the human is letting the AI do most of the writing, presumably. But let's turn things around. What if you were the toddler and the one guiding you was the AI? What if everything you, the toddler, learned about houses came from a machine that had never seen one, had never touched its walls, been protected from the rain by its roof, or walked with its own feet through its halls? That sounds sentimental, but think of the reality. AIs that generate photos of realistic-looking people still constantly mess up anatomy. Why, when they have millions upon millions of photos to look at and literally unlimited time to practice, do they still screw up basic things like elbows and fingers and eyes and heads and literally everything else? Why? Because a machine has never seen a human and has no interest in humanity or learning about anatomy. It has no craving for truth or reality or for representing reality accurately. It experiences no shame or embarrassment when it gets it wrong. It doesn't care because it's just software. The fear is not that AI is going to start to be indistinguishable from reality, because that isn't going to happen. The fear is that no one will care. If no one cares, then they'll keep right on treating the fake like it's real. Then after a few decades of this, if that, the line between reality and simulation will blur. Not because they're so similar, but because humanity no longer has that touchstone to real reality to use to judge fake reality and determine that it is fake. After a few decades of that, if that, real reality and fake reality will be indistinguishable. Again, not because they're so similar, but because the human mind will be so untethered from reality that it won't be able to register a distinction. We won't wait for grandma to die to resurrect her with a hologram. We'll talk to the hologram and to the real grandma in exactly the same way as if they were one and the same. Is that future avoidable? Of course it is. But I don't make policy and I can't control adult humans with free will. The best we can do is choose the harder path. I know AI is kind of fun and I know it can seem really helpful, but everything it does for you, you can do for yourself. You just have to learn how. And learning how will make you a better person and a stronger person. That goes for scheduling your day, understanding a book or article, figuring out how to talk to your angry girlfriend, learn a language, or, yes, writing a book. I get it. The AI tools that help you plot and brainstorm seem like a godsend when you're groping in the dark trying to figure out how to do something no one ever taught you how to do. But just because the AI makes it easier, arguably, does not mean that you've learned anything. You're still in exactly the same place you started, but now worse off because you're no longer motivated to get better. I don't care what part of the writing process you're having trouble with. Never ever use AI to help you. Not ever. Run a spell check if you want, but you shouldn't even use it for your grammar. Take a grammar course or read the Chicago Manual of Style. Then you'll have actually learned the grammar. If you make a mistake, so what? Fix it and move on with your life. We're human beings, not machines. We learn a lot more from mistakes than we do from successes. But what if you want to improve your literary ability, but you're smart, so you don't want to use any kind of AI assistance at all? What then? If you want to improve your writing, you absolutely must do two things: read and write. Read extensively across all genres. Read books that are a bit above your comfort level. Look up words you don't know and idioms or literary devices you don't understand. Do not use SparkNotes, Wikipedia, or ChatGPT, or Grok, or any other human or artificial summarizing tool. Do not ask the AI what it all means. Do it yourself. When you're done, you'll know more and your literary intelligence will have grown. This takes time. It's worth it. In terms of brainstorming, if your mind is empty, you fill it by reading. If you need ideas for a story or an essay or whatever, go read. Don't watch Netflix. Don't binge One Piece or whatever. Actually read words on a page. As you read, the creative functions of your mind will power into life as you engage your brain to process the narrative you're taking in. The creative process and imagination have been found to be far more active when reading than when viewing media. So read, don't watch. New ideas will come and they will do so organically. Don't use AI. When you do that, you're disengaging the human workings of your creativity, essentially taking out your creative power core and replacing it with a machine. A machine, by the way, that has been ingesting at best millions of Reddit posts, and at worst, millions of books or works of art stolen from other writers and artists. Sure, you can ask a machine to read all those books for you and then brainstorm on your behalf, but then you're getting a corporate-made machine's corporate critical literacy version of faked humanity specifically arranged and presented to please you instead of challenge you. Do you really want everything you write to come out just like another textual version of corporate Memphis? The bottom line here is that humanity, as such, has already developed a daily reliance on AI. If that reliance grows, human consciousness will be at risk. If a writer allows this reliance to infect their creative process, they'll kill their literary talent. Will AI destroy the world? Why would it need to? Social media has made humanity into zombies. AI is going to come along now and guide them by the nose wherever the AI overlords want them to go. In terms of writing, if we keep going like this, actual real-life novelists will be so rare and so extraordinary that they'll probably be on the same level as artisan oil painters. So no, AI isn't going to kill literature. If anything, the AI apocalypse will finally make the divide between slop and real writing so wide that you'd have to be brain dead to not be able to spot the difference. The unfortunate fact is that if more people keep melting their brains with social media and AI reliance, the more unable they'll be to recognize AI writing if a neon sign saying, "Written by AI," pops out of the book and punches them in the face. Or, far more likely, they just won't care. How long the publishers can continue like that is something only the future knows. How long these AI-reliant people are even able to read is something only the future knows. But it's up to you whether or not you let yourself become that. As I said before, I have a list of sources and further reading on my website. There's a link to that below. If you'd like an ad-free podcast version of this video, I'm starting to put those on my website too, if you're interested. I've also got a link to that below. I've also got a new list of winter reading recommendations now that we're into the bitter part of the season. So many links. If you've made it to the end, thank you for watching. I can't thank all of you enough for all the support you gave me throughout 2025. Otto and I wouldn't be here without you all. Here's to 2026 and another great year. I don't want to say keep it real, but, you know,